All right. So, good morning, everyone. It's so nice to see all of you. I'm in my classroom today. It's nice and bright, and I don't have awkward false lighting going on, so life is good. I want to go ahead and take us all to the syllabus to start, because there's an LDC hack that I want to discuss with you really quick. And if you haven't noticed this yet, hopefully it'll be something really exciting. And I felt like could see it coming up in the chat this week. And so, I guess not the chat, the discussion thread on the teaching channel. So one of the things that we now have the capability of doing within mini tasks that we didn't before is adding optional fields. Have any of you seen that ability or capability yet? Ooh, I see some shaking their heads no, and okay, this is really exciting. So I'm gonna go ahead and go to my library, and I just, oh, I thought I pulled one up. Where did it go? There we go. I pulled up a mini task really quick so I can show you where to find it within the mini task. If you go right here to this big red More Options button when you're in a mini task, you can see this option says Edit Optional Fields. When you click on that, you can add a differentiation field as well as a reflection field into the mini task. Previously, the only place that you had reflection was at the bottom of the module as a whole. So I'm going to go ahead and click both of these. I'm going to update my fields. And now I have a differentiation box where I can add different comments or notes to myself about how I want to differentiate. Somebody has some feedback happening. I'm trying to figure out who it is. If you're not muted, if you could mute for just a second, that'd be really great. Oh, perfect. Thank you so much. And so kind of like some of the comments in the discussion this week asynchronously, this is that place where you can really think about, okay, what are my students going to struggle with when it comes to this skill? What are some of the things that I might need to have on hand to support on-the-fly differentiation, like Kelly talked about, to really help them be successful with this mini task and continuing to develop this skill. And then at the bottom, there's a reflection where you could capture notes about how it went, things that you changed or modified. That way you have your notes section that doesn't have to be, a lot of us print them off and write our notes on it, right there at the end of class. But, some people really like being able to capture it where it's easy to go back so they don't lose those pieces of paper. And so you can capture those notes in the reflection section. Additionally, and I'm going to jump back to the syllabus for just a second, I have a link here to this. There's a national board template now that guides teachers and how to think through the differentiation and reflection optional fields. It's a really great support for component 2. If you go to the LDC library, just the general library, and when you search, the easiest way to find it is to do NBCT, and it opens up this National Board mini task template. And what you can do is use this template where you take these key question sections, like here are some questions to guide your thinking through differentiation. And so you could use this to help support teachers, or as a teacher yourself, to think through, what do I need to know to differentiate this mini task for my students? In the comment bubble, it also just links that to how that fits with the 5 core propositions. Then lots of information here. It also talks a little bit about where the National Board connections are when you're thinking about your instructional strategies and how you want to customize those for your students. And then there are some resources down here as far as the 5 core propositions, different links to National Board, and a free Atlas trial to go and see their library. And then finally, in that reflection section, you can see some guiding questions and connections for your reflection process. Now, this part would be really great for any of your teachers who are working on National Board certification, because some of these questions will help guide them in their thinking about how to reflect on the lesson that they taught to support their portfolio development. So some really great resources. some little hacks as you're thinking about mini tasks and making those connections to differentiation to support you and the teachers that you work with. Really quick, before I move on, are there any questions about this template or the optional fields?
I've got a quick question. Can you just review really quickly where to find those again? Because I'm trying to follow along and I got lost.
No problem. I'll be happy to. So first of all, I'm going to show you just on this template, when you want to add those fields, if you're in your mini task, so you're in editing mode of your mini task, you go to more options. And when you click the red more options button, it gives you this option to edit optional fields. So when I click that, now I can add those boxes for differentiation and reflection. Additionally, if I'm a teacher and I find this national board template, I can copy the mini task and then add it to my library. But when I'm in the LDC library and I need to find the national board one, the easiest search mechanism is doing NBCT, that piece of their acronym. And once you search NBCT, that template comes up for you. You could probably search national board or templates, but I've found that acronym to be the easiest way to pull it up quickly. Additionally, there's one other place that you guys can find it, and it is on today's syllabus. I linked directly to the template right here as part of the hack. Any other questions?
I would just say, Kimba, in the upcoming months, like you folks are seeing things that are softly launched, maybe that are the freshest things that haven't really been publicized yet. So we are working with the National Board on a campaign to really make a big splash about all these resources. But right now we put a few things in newsletters. We're sharing it out a little bit. But there'll be a much bigger communication campaign that you'll have resources to be able to forward and share with people this spring.
Excellent. Thank you.
Are those?
Can I ask a clarification on that? So Barb, what you were saying, we can share them with people now, right? We're not saying don't share them yet.
Absolutely. I'm just saying it'll be easier to share them once you actually have like, oh, I can forward the blog, or oh, right. I can, you know, I think that's one of the important things for you guys as you know, you're making a deeper investment in your building your coaching, and then everyone around you benefits, you know, because they get all, you know, access to new ideas and resources sooner. So I don't want to co-opt any more time today to talk about this, but again, this really opens up a lot of great opportunities for people who are LDC teachers to think about pursuing national board, and for national board teachers to think about using LDC as evidence.
Are those optional fields available on mini tasks that are already created, or is it just through the national board?
Nope, mini tasks that are already created. You can add those to anyone.
Thank you.
Yo, you know it. Any other questions? All right, well, let's dive in because we have a full plate for us today. I do want to share a resource with you. Part of what, you know, the ongoing iterative nature of this work and growing and making it better and stronger is the first protocol that we used, and this is going to be really similar, you're not going to see much difference. The task feedback protocol was really more geared towards feedback. And what we did is we slightly modified it to better capture the kind of conversation that we're having here in our PLC. And so I want you to click on this task workshop protocol link. And when you click on that, it'll look a little bit different. It's pretty much the same, but we're going to follow this PLC protocol right here as we look at the task. And one of the things that I want to try today to start us off and get people thinking about tasks and engaging with the feedback is we're going to walk through the first couple of questions and we're going to give feedback to Amy. So if you haven't pulled up Amy's task, go ahead and pull up Amy's task. I am going to have Amy share her screen in just a second. However, we're going to go through and we're going to start by looking at the task. I like to add one extra step to the front of this and look at the grade band first and then read the task and then look at the standards. And then what I want us to do is in the chat to answer this question. When you look at question 4, are the focus standards clearly driving the task? Right? what do you notice about how the content blanks are worded? And then we're going to go on to the next question as far as, do any elements cause hiccups, confusion, or miscues within the task? And so we're really going to think about what are a couple of those points? What are we noticing? And instead of just starting with an open dialogue where only one or two of us can share at a time, we're going to do our thinking just really quickly in the chat. And so just pick one thing that you notice. It could be a push, it could be a pull, it could be, you know, something that you feel is really strong, and so some warm feedback. It could be something that you have a question about, and maybe you want to pose a question about her feedback, about her task, sorry. Any questions about the process we're going to use? All right. So I'm going to have this up on my screen when Amy starts sharing hers. And so I'm going to stop share and have Amy go ahead and share her screen. And as she's sharing her screen, I'm going to go up to the top, and where you can exit full screen mode, I'm going to exit from where I can see hers, but then I can also have another window open, so I can really be thinking at the same time. Fantastic, Amy. Thank you so much. So now that Amy has hers up, I'm remembering to go up to exit full screen mode so I can kind of adjust hers, and I can have both windows open at the same time on my computer where I can see her screen and also be thinking about my ideas and feedback. So go ahead and let's look at your grade band. Will you read us your task, Amy? And then we'll go to your standards.
Okay, my task is, after reading the 2 articles from the Washington Post, write an analytical paragraph in which you discuss the author's arguments and evaluate which argument is stronger and support your position with evidence from the text.
All right. We scroll down to the standards.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. And just read through your focus standards.
The first one is RI 8. Delineate and evaluate the argument and specific claims in a text, assessing whether the reasoning is valid and the evidence is relevant and sufficient, and identify false statements. RI1, cite strong and thorough textual evidence to support analysis of what the text says explicitly, as well as inferences. And then writing 10.4, produce clear and coherent writing in which the development, organization, and style are appropriate to task, purpose, and audience.
Perfect. Thank you. All right. So what I'm going to do is ask everyone in the chat, what do you notice in this task? What I'd like you to do is post one piece of feedback for Amy. Remember, Amy's is really similar to Cindy's that we looked at last week. Slightly different grade level, right? Cindy's was middle school, yours is high school, and different texts, but the thinking work is the same, right?
Yes.
Perfect. All right. So, go ahead.
The idea is that this is part of a larger module. So this is just one little piece of something that's going to be a little bit more developed.
Yeah, and it's a whole unit on argumentation, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Excellent. All right, everyone, time to post in the chat. Think about what feedback you would give at this point. So I see a few questions coming up about product.
I'm reading through your comments as well. At the top, in part of the overview, since this is kind of a snippet of, like a mini task in a larger module, eventually at the end, they will be writing an argument to the school principal as to whether Shakespeare should still be included in curriculum or not. So this is, this part with the paragraph is just an idea of getting them into the text and making sure that they understand that, about evaluating sources and coming up with strong arguments and really analyzing the arguments, if that makes sense.
Hold on, I'm not sure.
Totally makes sense, Amy, by the way.
Yes, they're here.
So I see a lot of really great comments about warm feedback about how nice this is with where it's placed, leading into this larger unit, right? So any comments that anybody wants to just really call out that you just really want to share and talk about with Amy beyond the chat? It looks like a lot of focus on product. There's one thing that I just want to share out and just kind of discuss as a group really quick before we say thank you to Amy. And you'll be able to pull all this from the chat, Amy, so you don't have to feel like you have to capture it all. You'll have that, right, at the end of the week. And so it's really nice to have so many comments. Is I have this question about the R1, right? Because currently when you look at your focus standards, you have the 2 reading standards and the writing standard, right? Will you scroll down just a tiny bit? If you don't mind, Amy, I'm sorry. Oh, up, I guess. I always do that backwards. I'm sorry. There we go. Just so I can see the focus standards. It's like backing up a trailer, right? Like you have to think about which direction you're going. Anyway, so that R1 standard, citing strong and thorough textual evidence, that's a really powerful support standard for every single task that we write. And one of the things that really want you all to think about and think about with your teachers is when you're creating that focus cluster, part of what adds the lift and the rigor to the thinking work of students is when you really meaningfully connect those, the standards together. And so could you add more lift? Would it add a little more power to it if you connected it with, instead of R1, which supports everything and is a support standard, to another standard that really drives the thinking work of it? And so I just suggested R2 as far as, and I like Jeanette's R6 because they're kind of identifying the central idea and then evaluating how the claims are made, right? And so I almost saw those as kind of being paired together. R6 would be really interesting to think about, but really think about your focus clusters in that way, especially with an ELA task, is how do you choose 2 reading standards that really kind of work together to lift the thinking work? So any other last comments before we move on to Mike's? Fantastic. Amy, thank you so much. Got tons of stuff in the chat and appreciate you sharing your task. Thank you.
I saw a comment from Sheena as Mike is pulling up his screen, and I'm hearing echoes of that across the board, that this quick task feedback like that, doing that in a chat, means that the author leaves with all of those comments. Everyone is participating. So if you think about going out, take a step back and think about your work as a leader in trying to enact this with multiple schools and get people participating and not losing them. There's so many reasons why to do this, and how quickly we can go from task to task.
Yep. Thanks, Barb. All right. Mike, we go ahead and share your screen. And what I'm going to have you do is tell us the grade band, read through the task, and take us to your focus standards.
All right, I'm trying to share the screen now.
It's coming. Oh, we might be on the wrong. Oh, you're just.
Well, I've got multiple monitors.
Oh, yeah, no problem.
And I can't tell if it's sharing the right one with you or not.
Now we see the right one. We are 100% with you.
So you can see the title now?
Yep, sure can.
Okay. Well, so the title of the module is Are Electric Vehicles Really All They Are Charged Up to Be? And it's for, I would imagine, a 7th grade science class. And this is the task. And I'll go ahead and read it. How does the environmental impact of electric automobiles compare to traditional gasoline-powered automobiles? After researching the environmental impact of both types of vehicles by reading relevant informational material, write a speech that you could deliver to a Board of Education meeting as they are considering their next vehicle purchase, in which you analyze the environmental impact of their options. Support your discussion with evidence from the texts, identify any gaps or unanswered questions, and be sure to acknowledge competing views.
Fantastic. Then we go to the standards.
All right. There's 4 standards I wanted to look at, and you can only see 3 of them now, I think. So the first one was a reading standard. Determine the central idea or conclusions of a text. Provide an accurate summary of the text distinct from prior knowledge or opinions. And the writing standard was produce clear and coherent writing in which the development, organization, and style are appropriate to task, purpose, and audience. And then I intentionally added a speaking and listening standard. Present claims and findings emphasizing salient points in a focused, coherent manner with relevant evidence, sound, valid reasoning, and well-chosen details. Use appropriate eye contact, adequate volume, and clear pronunciation. And the content, the science standard, you should be able to see. ETS 2B. Influence of engineering and technology and science on society and the nature of the world. By the end of grade 8, all human activity draws on natural resources and has both short and long-term consequences, positive as well as negative, for the health of both people and the natural environment. And then there's a bunch of supporting standards, which I'm not going to bother to show.
Great. Thank you. Will you do me a favor? There's something really interesting that Mike did that I intentionally didn't respond to yet, so I apologize for that, Mike.
That's okay.
But if you scroll up to your task, Mike posed some really great questions in the comment bubble, and I'd like us just to talk about the questions that Mike posed.
Do you want me to open those?
Yeah, would you please?
Sure.
So look at Mike's task and consider this first question of, should this be a compare and contrast more than an analysis? And then I'll have you scroll down after we kind of talk through that first question to look at the other one. So go ahead and take a minute and read through this and vocally chime in with a response to Mike's question. When you consider the thinking work with this, environmental impact of electric automobiles compared to traditional gasoline-powered automobiles, does it feel more analysis to you in the speech that they're going to present for their product? Or does it feel more compare contrast?
So I think it's more analysis, just because when I look at the standards for the science and technical reading, when that compare standard is generally the kids are comparing something that they're getting from a simulation or an experiment to something that they're reading, rather than two things that they're reading. So I feel like it is probably more of an analysis where you're looking at two different ways that people are telling you about something, and you're analyzing which one. I mean, you are comparing, but I think you're doing more analysis than you are with what would you do with that compare, the standard that's compare, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like the compare is how you get to the analysis, but the ultimate is the stronger thinking is the analysis, but the kids have to compare and contrast the two, especially because it says analyze the environmental impact of their options. So they're obviously looking at both options and then analyzing from that comparison which one is the one they would argue for.
So Kelly gave a different viewpoint in the chat. Do you want to just describe why you feel it's more comparison or contrast? Compare contrast.
I agree that ultimately to do the analysis, you do have to do the comparison and contrast. But I think if you're presenting that information to someone to make an informed decision, they're going to want to see more of that compare and contrast. That was just my thinking.
That's an interesting thing. So it's more tied to then the speech part, where you're really wanting them to see the differences and not just that. And could the analysis be part of the comparison? Like, you have to analyze them to then be able to compare?
I don't think you can separate the analysis from the comparison contrast. So either way, I think all of those pieces are going to have to come together.
Yeah, and to be clear to students, would it be more helpful to use a template that says compare, where it says write a speech that you would deliver to a Board of Education meeting, in which you compare the environmental impact of the board's options, right, kind of thing? And I almost wonder too, because compare is the verb used in the question, is that really the thinking that's driving the overall task? It's just interesting. Will you scroll to your second question,
Sure.
Mike? This one's a little longer, so you guys will probably want to have this open on your own screen so you can read through the aspects and the thinking of this. And we'll take a second and respond to this. Also, as you're reading through this, if there's something that's really striking you about the task or the standards, please enter it into the chat, because we only get a tiny bit longer with Mike before we move on to the next one. So what do you guys think? Do the demands guide the students too much? Or do you think they are beneficial? I think that's what the heart of all this is.
What I didn't want to do is tell them what to think. I wanted them to realize that there are gaps and unanswered questions. I didn't want to tell them that there are gaps and unanswered questions.
But I think, and I wonder what other people think about, well, I'll just hold tight for a second. What do you guys think about that statement? Do you think it tells them to add that additional demand, or do you think that's helpful for students? And you can hear that clock in the background, so it just adds to like that Jeopardy sound in the moment. We're getting some good responses in the chat about this. One thing that I'd just like to say is I think because you're just asking them to identify, you're reminding them of that important step and expecting that demand. And so then there could be some really nice instruction to support it, because sometimes students don't know to look for that or don't know what that means. And so if you add it as a demand, then you need to add instruction to your ladder to help them know how to identify gaps and unanswered questions. And so it allows for a really powerful instructional opportunity.
I think it also depends on when in the scope and sequence of an academic year this is taking place. If it's the beginning of the year, the kids may not realize that there's always gaps and unanswered questions. And I think as the year progresses, you need to tell them things like this less and less. They need to be able to make that jump themselves. So it depends on the background, I think. When in the year is this, and what is a reasonable expectation of that time of year?
Definitely. And I think once you make that decision, putting that in the overview is going to be really important, right? Like when
I think you're right. And that's one thing I learned about this as well. Without an overview that really describes this, people can jump to poor conclusions as they look at it.
Yep. And you know what? I think what you're saying right there is really important. We haven't discussed this explicitly yet through this course, but as you're writing your task, you want to make sure that you have not just your task and your focus standards. I mean, that's been a big focus when you're initially giving feedback, but that background and for students as well as the overview is what gives that depth and that explanation to what your goals are with this task, what you're hoping the thinking work of students is going to be. And it's really important that you fill those out. And if you haven't already, make sure that you're adding that to your task, because realize that whole section, when you look at it, it says task, and all these different points are part of that broader task section. Starts with the overview, goes into the grade band and the course, then it's the task, the standards, the rubric, making decisions about what you're really going to be assessing with students on that rubric, background for students, the text, that's super important. And I noticed that this one doesn't have text yet, so it'll be really interesting to see where that goes. Now it's researching, so you might not have any, but that would be something that then you add in the overview, right? Yeah. And then any optional extension. So like with this piece, I would almost want to see them deliver that speech that they wrote, even in a mock environment or at the actual school board would be a powerful extension. And so really think about how you're like completing that whole section to support what your goals are with the task. Awesome. Mike, thank you so much. Everyone, please make sure that you go in and give Mike some feedback in the comment bubbles for his. He has some really great other questions posed in there. And I think that's a powerful way to start that dialogue using core tools and how you want to work through tasks. So thank you so much, Mike. All right, we are going to go right into Sheena. Sheena, want to go ahead and share yours? And we're going to go through that same process in which tell us the grade band, read us the task, and then we'll look at the standards and we'll give you some feedback. Yeah, you could choose that Chrome window. There you go. And then that way you don't have to worry about everything else that's on your screen. Oh, Sheena.
Okay, it's shared, and can you see me?
Yep.
Hear me?
Yep.
Okay. That was a little more confusing than I thought it was going to be.
That's all right.
Okay, I'm sorry. Can you repeat which order you'd like me to do things in, Kimba?
Yeah, will you go to the top to where your grade band is? Start with grade band, then read the task, and then the standards.
Okay. The grade band, I saw some people chose like 8 to 8, which is what I want, but it wouldn't let me. So it's 7 to 8.
Oh, really quick thing, Sheena. If you click on the grade band, I'm going to show you this really quick while you're editing. If you click on that, now click on the bar kind of way to the left or way to the right, just somewhere on that whole bar. And it opens it back up for you. And now you can drag it over and put it right on top of the exact grade that you want instead of them getting locked. But that's how you separate them when they get stuck.
Gotcha. Okay, well then I'm going to fix that.
Perfect.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah,
All
you know.
right, so it's grading. And then the task, is that what you want next?
Yep.
Okay. After reading the short story, The Scarlet Ibis by James Hurst, write an essay in which you analyze how particular lines of dialogue or events in the story propel the action and reveal aspects of the two main characters in ways which provoke the characters' decisions. Support your discussion with evidence from the text. And then my focus standards are RL 3. And in grade 8, it goes a little bit more specific to just interaction, to actually looking at particular lines of dialogue or incidents in a story, and how they propel the action, reveal aspects of a character, or provoke a decision. And then I have 2 writing standards. The first is 2, write informative explanatory text to examine a topic and convey ideas, concepts, and information through the selection, organization, and analysis of relevant content. And then writing 9, draw evidence from literary or informational text to support analysis, reflection, and research.
Excellent, thank you. So I'm going to pose a question here as we start talking about Sheena's task. And when you look at W9, that draw evidence from literary or informational text to support analysis, reflection, and research, in a lot of ways, W9 is really like R1. Right? It's that really strong focus standard. When they're writing, you're going to want them to do that. And so it's more of that support. It'll always be present. And so when you're thinking about a focus cluster for ELA, you want 2 reading standards because one of those reading standards is your content standard. And the other one, think of it as like how they're going to read the text. And sometimes they'll interplay with each other in really nice ways. And so I'm just wondering from the group, when you look at Sheena's task, what other possible reading standard might be a nice lift to this, might pair nicely with R3? Hopefully you have the document open for that task workshop. From that, there's a really quick link to the standards booklet, and I find that really helpful when I'm thinking about what standard I want to pair. I'm going to go ahead and put that link in the chat, though, if you want to open up the standards booklet really quick to think about what would be a nice reading standard to pair for Sheena. And so remember, the focus cluster goes back to that first course section, 1.4. I guess it wasn't the first section, but, you know, course block 1, construct a task, as opposed to course 2, develop a plan. And it's really about the 3 legs of the stool and how the three legs really support the thinking work of the standard.
Actually, Kimba, that's exactly what my question to myself was
Nice.
in my little comment, because I kind of argued with myself about what a reading standard would be, and it was hard for me to get past RL1, and I knew it shouldn't be that one. So then I turned to the writing. One I had thought about, though I would have to kind of reframe some things, would be 6, because the 2 characters do sort of have different points of view, but really only one of the points of view is shared in the story. So I didn't know about that one.
Oh, that could be really interesting. I was even thinking about like R4, because it's the power of the language used in those moments of dialogue that really reveal those aspects of character. And so it's like thinking of what you're actually examining in those to get the character part would be another potential way to go, I think, too. How about other folks? Oh, and it's so true, Liz. You need to have tissue when you read this story, right?
Oh, it's a beautiful story.
Oh, it is. I love teaching it. I do have a question about the task itself. I really like what you're saying, but to me, the language is just a little bit cluttered, and I wonder if there's a way to clean it up just a little bit. I mean, I really see reflection of the standard there, but if I'm a student reading it, I'm going to get a little bit lost.
Right.
Is the only thing.
Right. Originally, the task said all 3, like very specifically, how does it propel the action, reveal aspects of character, or provoke a decision. And then I felt like that was too much. So then I tried to sort of focus on one, but maybe it would be better to just focus on one of those or two of those things necessarily. Not three.
Yeah. Jamie put a comment about how she used R3 and R6 together. Do you want to give any feedback to Sheena about how that same thinking might support her in Sheena's task? Trying to give time in case she needs to unmute or anything. All right, there's been a whole lot.
It's really neat.
Okay, well,
Okay.
oh, Jamie, did you unmute? Okay, I guess it was somebody else I heard. Sorry about that. I hear my feedback now, an echo of my own voice, so sorry. Sheena, thank you so much. There's some comments in the chat, and we'll make sure to get you some more feedback on top of that as well. But
I had just one thing to say.
Please do, Jeanette. Thank you.
Okay. When I'm reading, when you said how particular lines of dialogue or events in the story, I wonder if you just concentrated on dialogue and did internal and external dialogue instead. You know, that way that could be the mini task because you're thinking about the character's internal dialogue.
Yeah.
So concentrate on that instead of both dialogue and events. That might tighten that up a little.
I love that.
That's a great
because
suggestion.
when I was annotating the text, there wasn't a great deal of dialogue that was spoken, but that's a great piece. I like that a lot. Yeah.
Now, there's something really powerful that you just said there, Sheena, that we want to make sure that we're doing when we're trying to think about what we want in our task, but also as we're developing our skills list, is taking the time to sit with the text and annotate it. You know, this came up in 2-3, right? What is the thinking work that you're doing as you're going through the text, and you want students to be able to recreate as well? Excellent. Oh, fantastic. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Let's go ahead and go right into Kim and Dana, because, you know, this time just goes by so fast as we're doing these tasks. And I thank you for being so gracious when it comes to really quick turnaround with your feedback. So thank you. So Kim and Dana, I don't know who's going to share your screen for you.
I will.
Yay, that works.
All right. There. Did it work?
It sure did. We can see it.
Yes. Awesome.
So go ahead and tell us your grade, grade band, read us the task, and we'll go right to your standards.
All right. So we did 4th grade, and our task was what themes are present in the stories The Old Couple in the Crane and Killikin, Orphan Boy of the Sky. After reading the 2 stories and participating in a Socratic seminar, write an extended response in which you compare the themes of the 2 folktales from different cultures. Support your response with evidence from the text. And then for our focus standards, we chose 4-9, which is comparing and contrasting theme. And then for our writing standard, we did informative and explanatory writing. But then we also included determining theme, because they'll have to determine theme in order to compare theme. And then we included the speaking and listening standard for the Socratic seminar, and then also using details in their response.
All right, thank you. So let's go ahead and take about 3 minutes, and everyone take a look at the task. If you'll scroll back up a little bit. I may not give the directions in the right way of scrolling, but that's how I think of it. And let's give them feedback of what you notice. What do you notice about the standards being reflected in the task? Does it feel appropriate? Are there any miscues or hiccups or issues that students might get tripped up on? What are the strengths? Really think about warm and cool feedback both, because I think that's really important to acknowledge the strengths as well as areas that could be improved. So let's go ahead and have everybody post in the chat their feedback this time, because we've been hearing some voices and some folks we haven't heard from in a while, and this way we can see everyone's comments. And then you two will get really great feedback.
Awesome.
All right, take about 3 minutes. Go ahead and type your thoughts.
One thing we did want to clarify while you guys are typing, we're sure that some of you guys haven't maybe heard that term, extended response. So it's in Kentucky on the K-Prep exam, the students are asked to write extended responses on the exam. And so throughout the year, that's the verbiage we use is extended response. But really what that is just an open-ended question that it begins with a prompt, but then it allows the students to write a response based on knowledge from the text. So we use extended response, those words, just because they're familiar with it, but it's very similar to like a short essay question, if that makes sense.
Oh, so I was just actually typing this as you were talking. Like, what does an extended response, what does the instruction look like in the latter? And so you would be teaching it as the structure of a short essay when you're going into that writing process part?
Yeah, so we, specifically at our school, we like to use a structure called ACE, where they answer the question, they cite evidence, and they explain why that evidence is good evidence. So we'll kind of work through and teach that structure of ACE. And that's a structure very specific to extended response that we use. But our plan would be to teach the strategy ACE and then use that to actually write their extended response.
Excellent. Have you thought about doing ACE to help support the, like maybe turning it in more of a short essay and having that develop their thinking in the body paragraphs? Because especially like compare and contrast, you could do first this one, first the differences and then the similarities, and you can almost give yourself multiple paragraphs, or, topic by topic kind of comparison, and having some kind of lead, like an introduction or introductory sentences, and then some kind of conclusion or wrap up that's separate from just being one paragraph. Just a way to think about what your skills and instruction will look like when you actually get to the writing product for an extended response.
And the extended response could be multiple paragraphs.
Exactly.
So, the restating the answer, and then it's just a structure that it could look that way, definitely.
Yeah, and so thinking about supporting, especially fourth graders with structure in their writing will be so powerful. So just a thought.
Yes,
absolutely.
That's good.
All right. So lots of really great stuff happening in the chat. And I want to thank you, ladies. Any final thoughts or questions that you guys have for Kim and Dana? All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. We're going to jump to Kate and Ellie. I don't know which one of you would like to share your screen. Kate and Ellie, we have 9 minutes, so we are in it, you guys. We can do this.
Okay. Yeah, I'll go ahead and share my screen. Let me pull that up. So Allie and I worked together. Hang on.
Oh, yeah, Kate and Ellie, I forgot about that show. Sorry.
Oh, yeah.
I saw something from the chat, and I just totally blurted right out.
Okay, so let me pull this back. Let me see if I can do this. Share screen. I want to share this. Okay, can you guys see the screen now?
Yes, we sure can.
Okay. So Allie and I collaborated on this, and as you can see from the overview, this is, I know we've, in this setting, stopped really using the term mini module, but that's really what the intention was, is this is a small thing, because in our experience, particularly sixth graders struggle with getting standard 5 beyond the identification stage. They're really in love with cause and effect, problem solution, but that's not what the sixth grade standards want. So this was a very kind of focused, intense look at that. So the task says, After reading Attack of the Maneaters and The Lion Whisperer, write a constructed response in which you analyze how the author uses specific sentences and sections of the texts to develop the central idea of the text. Support your discussion with evidence from the text. And so the three standards that we chose to be our cluster are writing, that's not true, reading, standard 5, analyze how a particular sentence, paragraph, chapter, or section fits into the overall structure and contributes to the development. And then reading standard 2, which goes because, if we're trying to see how the structure develops the central idea, then of course you need to have the central idea as one of your focus standards. And then writing 4, this is actually similar to what we were just talking about, the idea of clear and coherent writing for that particular structure. Allie and I used the term constructed response because that is the broader, extended response fits into that, short answer response fits into that. We were thinking more of an extended response, but constructed response just made the umbrella a little, broader, so maybe people outside of Kentucky would have a better chance of knowing what we meant by that.
Excellent. Thank you. So everyone, take a look. What kind of feedback do you have? One thing that I just want to start with that I noticed is I really like the way you paired RI5 with RI2. I think they work really nicely here together and with your focus. I do have a question that I just want to pose as people are kind of thinking and reviewing it. What's the benefit of having the 2 texts with the way the rest of your task is written?
Honestly, it's because of the 2. So there's nothing inherently special about having 2 texts. It's just that these 2 texts in particular go together very, very well, and they look at the same topic, but from different. One is a more historical look at it, and one is a modern take on it. But they were written to be a paired text. So since they already kind of went together, it seemed like a great idea to show kids how, in the more historical text, because really the structure is they thought this, but now we know this because it was in the past, and so we can see how the structure it changes the idea development because now we know better. But then to compare that with the more modern story, and I think you could even ask the question 50 years from now, if someone were writing the second article, would there be that same what do we know better now? So it's only because those 2 texts work so well together that we thought they should go together, not because we should always do 2 texts with this particular standard.
Hearing you talk, I almost wonder if there might be an interesting opportunity to add an additional demand where somehow connect, what is it? Sorry, I keep hearing the echo of myself, so it's kind of hard to talk when you hear the echo and I don't know where it's coming from. But I want to say it's D11, but it's you connect this, and it could be connecting the 2 texts and how they're different, or they include something like that. Because I just wonder if it almost feels like it's 2 papers where you take one text and you look at the sentence and sections to develop the central idea, and then you take the next one and you do it because there's not a connection piece. It's just something to consider. But I also really like the idea of what you were saying with where could it go? Have you thought about adding that as an extension?
We did talk about it, and I think honestly that we're not 100% sure yet. This is way harder for 6th graders than you think it should be. They just can't get it. So I think when Allie and I were bouncing ideas back and forth, we thought about extensions, but we weren't in love with the idea of necessarily making it a part of it until we had taught it to see, or until we had one of our colleagues teach it to see. By the time we get to the extension, has it blown up and taken over 3 weeks of our time? I don't know yet, if that makes sense. But we like the idea of it.
So Jeanette posed a really interesting question in the chat. Jeanette, do you want to talk about that? that
So I really like when kids get to choose, and they have a couple of things that they have read, and then when they sit down to read or to write their response, for them to go, I really connected to this piece and I really saw it a whole lot better in this piece, so I'm going to use this piece to write my response. Even though I've read both, if that makes sense. I just think that letting kids have a little bit of choice, especially middle schoolers, letting them start thinking, I think that starts them down the road of when I'm going to research, I'm going to be able to pick for a purpose, and I need to really pick something that I can understand and connect to. So it was almost like a step in that direction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we could do that. I mean, we would do the same mini tasks or the same work and the same thinking and the same analysis of both of the articles. But yeah,
just interesting idea, huh? There's some really great things going on in the chat. Ladies, this is a really beautiful task. A lot of interesting things to think about. I'm gonna write one last comment in the chat because I've been talking and haven't been able to yet either. But we are at time. Oh my gosh. We have Liz's that we didn't get to today, but she is really looking forward to being able to share it next week and give her a little more time to think. And we'll have the time to give her meaningful feedback. And so we're going to add Liz to next week. So we'll have 4 that we'll look at next week, which isn't quite as big as this. And it's already the last week of our blended journey. So what I'd like you to do is just do one quick final whip around where you think about what resonated the most with you today. There is a resource that I put in on the syllabus to look at benchmark mini tasks and how to use mini tasks as a formative assessment. It's a PowerPoint. We'll talk about it hopefully a little bit next week, but it did come up in the teaching channel. Yeah.
In case people are thinking it's not next week, it's the 14th.
Oh yeah, thank you, sorry. Our last week is the 14th because you have spring break. Oh, Barb, thank you for that clarification.
I don't want anybody to think they're coming, that their spring break is interrupted.
Yeah, exactly. But with it, you can see how to use mini tasks. We use the same mini task, but you customize it to the content at different points across the year to really track how students are growing with a specific skill. And so take some time to kind of play around. There's links within that PowerPoint, but we'll come back to that as well. Thank you so much. Go ahead and put your comment, your word that resonates with you. And Kate and Allie, thank you for sharing your screen. Thank you for sharing your task with us. This has been really great. So go ahead and put your resonating idea and have a wonderful day. Thank you so much, everyone.